In the history of college football, few coaches have had as lasting an impact on offensive strategy as Don Faurot. The game you watch, the game you love, whether it's the high powered spread option or the classic wishbone, all traces back to one man's innovation in the 1940s. Faurot's split T formation had an enormous impact on football over the years. This video is part of our History of Offense series. In this video, we'll explore who Don Faurot was, how he developed the split T offense, and why it became the foundation for the option play, one of the sport's most enduring offensive concepts. Then we're going to go through some footage of the T formation and split T plays, and I'll include a segment by a young Daryl Royal explaining the difference between the two formations. Don Faurot was born on June 23, 1902 in Mountain Grove, Missouri. A natural athlete, he played halfback at the University of Missouri in the 1920s before quickly transitioning into coaching. He started his career at Kirksville State Teachers College, now Truman State, and turned the struggling program into a dominant force. In 1935, Faurot returned to his alma mater as the head coach of the Missouri Tigers, a program that, at the time, was far from elite. The Tigers had only won 2 games in the previous 3 seasons. In 1939, Missouri won their first Big Six Conference championship. They won the conference again in 1941 and 1942. In the early 1940s, football saw a shift in offensive strategy. The single wing had dominated football for decades, but Clark Shaughnessy had introduced a new wrinkle with the T formation. It would eventually take over offensive football. Faurot, however, envisioned a modification to the T, an offense that would create space, exploit defensive gaps, and introduce decision-making into the quarterback's hands. His idea: the split T formation. Here's what made it different. He split the offensive linemen wider apart to stretch the defense horizontally. I'll let a young Daryl Royal explain it to you.
This is what it amounts to. The diagram that you're looking at on the board now is of the split, tight T formation. And if you'll notice, the linemen are in tight to each other. The guard's close to the center. The tackle is close to the guard, and so on. And just above that, I'll try to draw up the split T formation and try to show you how it contrasts with the standard or conventional tight T formation. Now, if you'll visualize, the tight T at the bottom is coming up the board with their offense, and the split T that's above will be coming down the board. Now, in the split T, you'll notice that the guards are split out from the center. The tackles are split out from the guards, and the ends are split from the tackles. In other words, there's splits all along the line. And that's how the name split T was first given to this particular formation.
Now that you've seen the split T on the blackboard, let's see how it works on the field in slow motion. And notice particularly how the line is spread out and the fact that the quarterback has the option of either running with the ball or passing it off.
Notice how the quarterback uses both hands on the pitch. The one-handed option pitch that you're probably used to seeing didn't come into football until much later. And later when we look at footage, we'll see that pitch, that same pitch, many times over.
And here's that same play at normal speed.
Oh, listen to him, listen to him.
Royal presents a very simple explanation of the line splits. So we're clear what we mean when we say splitting. It's the distance between the players on the offensive line. In reality, it was much more complicated than Royal's explanation. There's an entire chapter about splitting the offensive line in the book Coaching Football in the Split T Formation by James Tatum and Warren Geese, published in 1953. How much do the linemen split? The first essential one must understand is that there is no definite distance to split, rather a minimum and a maximum distance for each position, which serves as an area of operation. These areas of operation will vary as follows. Guards may split from 6 inches to 24 inches from the center. Tackles split from 12 to 48 inches from their guard, and ends have the prerogative of splitting for 12 inches up to any distance at their discretion, just so long as they can accomplish their job and not interfere with some teammate in the effective performance of his assignment. Next, there are rules for the offensive line to follow. How do linemen know when to take their maximum and when to take their minimum splits? While the split of the offensive line will vary according to the type of defensive strategy employed by the opposition, a safe rule to use as a point of departure is as follows. Versus all defenses, take your maximum split if a defensive man lines up on the line of scrimmage head on to you. If no man lines up head on to you on the line of scrimmage, then take your minimum split. An article in the St. Louis Dispatch on November 2nd, 1949, by St. Louis coach Dukes DeFord explains the benefit of line splits. The simplicity of the split tee is manifest in the spreading of the lineman, which in effect creates at the outset the holes the other tee is forced to open physically. Noting again that in the split tee the holes are already there, while in the regular formation the lineman will have to open them, serves to explain, too, why the closed tee requires more deception and 2-on-1 blocking to feint or force the space necessary through which to send its ball carrier. Let me explain some of this. In the era we're talking about, and for quite a while after, the offensive line has a huge disadvantage in that they cannot use their hands. They have to keep their hands inside on their chest. Basically, what we called chicken wing blocking, like this. And if you played from that era, you know what I'm talking about, and you can explain it to the youngsters around you about how terrible it was. Now, let's say I'm a guard and I come out in the T formation and I line up right next to my center. It is 6 inches away from him. So it's a very tight space, and the defense has to line up against me. And they're not going to line up with wide splits either. It's just going to be a bunch of bodies in one area. So the split T comes along, and now I'm a guard. And when I line up, I'm going to gauge my split and where the guy across from me lines up. Now, let's say the play is going in that direction, and a defender comes out and he lines up in front of me. So when the play starts, the play is going in that direction. All I have to do is basically step out and do my chicken wing like this. And I don't have to block him as much as I have to get in his way for just a bit. I don't have to push him to create a hole. And this is a big deal because let's say that this guy weighs 230 pounds and I'm a 180-pound guard, and I have to block this guy for an entire game. But since I don't have to push him to create space, but just get in his way, that's a huge difference in stamina over 4 quarters. And it provided an advantage to the offensive lineman that the original T formation did not. Offensive linemen now, currently in today's game, they can use their hands. So they can come out and they can grab the defenders on the inside of their jerseys. And this is why you see so many linemen and so many players wear such tight-fitting jerseys, so it's harder to grab them on the inside. Now, offensive linemen can also punch. And what I mean by that is, for example, in pass blocking, your first step when the ball is snapped is a kickback step to set yourself, and then you punch. Now, this is a one-handed punch. You might not want to do that because a defensive lineman could swipe down on your hands and you'd lose your momentum. So sometimes you're punching with 2 hands. And that's a very simple version of this. There's a lot more to it, but you get the idea that the offensive line back in the day was very disadvantaged because of our beloved chicken wing blocking techniques. Now, the other component that made the split T different was huge, the option. Faurot introduced an option-based run game where the quarterback could keep the ball, pitch it, or hand it off based on the defense's reaction. Instead of following a set script, the quarterback now had the ability to read the defense in real time. If the defensive end crashed in toward the fullback, the quarterback could keep the ball and run himself. And if the defender stayed home, he could pitch it to a trailing halfback. Basically, you take the defender out of the play without having to block him, and therefore you have an extra blocker for other defenders. Here we're going to have Don Faurot himself explain it.
Now the quarterback takes the ball from center here and moves directly down his line. Don't come back any. And he may hand off to this right halfback hitting in. That's what we call a handoff play. And it's one of the fastest hitting plays in football. Then the famous split T option play comes in. He may either fake the ball here and keep it, or he may, if the end smashes toward him, he'll pitch the ball here to the left halfback coming around, and that is a pitch out and run. Now this diagram represents the running pass from the split T. And this left halfback coming around takes the pitch out, fakes the run, then throws the pass to the right end down the field.
Defenses had never seen anything like it. Faurot's first chance to implement the split T came in 1941 at Missouri. That season, the Tigers finished 8-2 and won the Big Six Conference Championship, a sign that the system worked. But before he could fully refine it, World War II intervened. Now, during the war, Faurot was stationed at the Iowa Pre-Flight Naval School, where he coached military teams and shared his ideas with other future coaching legends, including Bud Wilkinson and Jim Tatum. When he returned to Missouri in 1946, he had fully developed the split T's principles. From 1946 onward, Missouri became one of the nation's best rushing teams. Opponents simply could not adjust to the deceptive nature of the split T. Where the ball was, who had it, and where it was going were mysteries to the defense. Now, with the option play again, it isn't just about deception, it's about simple math. We have 11 players on each side, and by not blocking one defender, I've taken one player out of the equation. That's one player I don't have to block, and the guy that would have blocked him is free to block another person. Offense in the running game is a lot about getting more of my people at the point of attack than you have to defend. And the option is a play that helps because I'm being redundant, but I hope you get the idea, because it takes the defender out of the play without me doing anything other than making him make a decision. That math issue, getting more players on the point of attack than you have to defend, is why the option has remained a deadly play since its inception. And I hope all that makes sense. Let me know in the comments. It didn't take long for other coaches to take notice, adopt Faurot's system, and then expand on it for decades. Bud Wilkinson used the split T at Oklahoma, refining it further and winning 3 national championships in 1950, 1955, and 56. Jim Tatum won a national title at Maryland in 1953. Daryl Royal at Texas combined it with power running concepts to create the wishbone offense in the 1960s, and I think he did pretty well with it too. Tom Osborne's Nebraska teams in the 1980s and 1990s still carried the DNA of Faurot's system in their triple option attack out of the eye. The flexbone, a variant of the wishbone, comes along in the early 80s, and then the zone read hits college football and then the NFL in the 2000s. And now we see the RPO everywhere, the run-pass option. Faurot's invention was no longer just a formation, it had become the foundation of option football. By the time Faurot retired from coaching in 1956, his impact was undeniable. He remained at Missouri as the athletic director until 1967 and played a major role in shaping the school's sports programs. Now, we tend to judge coaches on their win-loss record, and especially by how many championships they've won. Don Faurot is an exception to that rule. He was loyal to Missouri to possibly a fault when it came to wins. For example, he had a policy that he would only recruit players from Missouri, and this resulted in Missouri fans being extremely loyal to their program. When he started at Missouri in 1935, the university had over $500,000 in debt on mortgages on the stadium, which had capacity for only 26,000 fans, and the field house. Now, $500,000 in 1935 would be the equivalent of around $12 million now. Consider that back then they didn't have massive TV contracts with which to make a lot of cash. Now, to pay off the debt, Faurot scheduled non-conference road games that paid handsomely, including 9 games at Ohio State from 1939 to 1949. The Tigers won just one of those contests. Missouri's football field was named Faurot Field in 1972, and capacity had doubled to more than 50,000. A statue of his likeness was erected outside the North Concourse in 1999. The plaque accompanying the statue starts with the following, written by St. Louis Post-Dispatch icon and Mizzou historian Bob Brogue. Here stands the symbol of old Mizzou, famed thin man from Mountain Grove, a boy who helped build this stadium and a football coach who filled it with victories and fresh hopes. And the plaque ends with, Old Coach's greatest gridiron accomplishment in 19th season was his creation of a unique split T formation that featured the celebrated quarterback option. Although widely sought, intensely loyal, Coach Faurot never left MU until someone up there wanted another Boy Scout. It's a testament to the man who not only transformed the Tigers, but changed the game itself. Faurot, inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1961, died in 1995 from congestive heart failure. Honestly, it can be difficult to look at a footage and determine whether a play is T formation or split T because of the lack of clarity of most footage and because of the variety of the line splits. And it doesn't help that I'm old and going blind and kind of slow too, but we'll give it a shot and see what we come up with. The first couple plays are of the single wing offense, an offense that dominated football for decades until it was replaced by the T formation. I'm sure you've watched our other videos in this series, but notice how bunched together everyone is and how tight the defense and offensive lines are together. Next up, we have the T formation, and notice again how in the tight T, as it's referred to as at times, how closely the offensive and defensive lines are just smashed together in one big mass. And like I was talking about earlier, you had to really block to make room. You had to push and look at these guys firing out and just mashing into the other guys across the line. Also notice in the T, sometimes the lot backs are aligned in a straight T, and sometimes the fullback would be slightly ahead, so it looks just slightly like a wedge, or they're just slightly aligned so that some of the backs are closer to the line than others. And the variety of the formations, the variety of how people line up is dependent upon whatever coach is going to run that formation. Next up is 1950 Boston College versus Georgetown, and look at how wide these splits are, and look at how spread out the defense is compared to the earlier plays we watched. Now, I chose this for the clarity of the footage. These two teams are terrible. 1950 Boston College didn't win a single game, and 1950 Georgetown, I think, won only 2. Next up, an option play. 2 things. Watch the quarterback come straight down the line instead of looping into the backfield like he would if he was on a toss play. And secondly, the option man who crashes down on the quarterback and he has to pitch the ball. It's not a well-executed play. These are not good teams. This is going to be another option play, but this time the option man takes the pitch man, the running back, and forces the quarterback to keep the ball and forces him back inside where the play is cleaned up by his other defensive teammates. And no doubt the defender went off the field and his coach said, hey, you don't let that guy outside of you again. And this is the result of that coaching session. The next 2 plays are basically kind of what we call a halfback pass. It's a lateral back and then 2 pass plays and a throw because, by God, these teams are desperate to score some points. And you can see, again, the variety of the line splitting and how the defense is lined up against them. And, they're, again, not very good plays. And there you go. Notice the alignment on these plays. The backs are not in a straight T like I was mentioning earlier. And again, this is how coaches decide to line up their formation. And you can see again that these teams are not the greatest teams in the world, they're not making a lot of yardage. On this last play from this game, you can see a man go in motion, and you can see the defender pointing to, hey, you go out there and get that guy. And then the quarterback just kind of runs around. Oh my God, I really need to score. And he does score. Unfortunately, he scores for the other team, and it's sad, kind of sad all around. But that's enough from that game.
Reed shows the Sooners how the split tee works as he keeps and carries to his own 40-yard line. Oklahoma quarterback Jim Harris gets the Sooners on the march with a sparkling dash to the North Carolina 43. Billy Pricer punches through a hole in the Tar Heel forward wall for a first down on the 32. Jim Harris gives off to Pricer, who flips to Bob Burris, and the Sooners pick up another first down on some Southwestern razzle-dazzle. Bob Burris, whose two brothers were All-Americans at Oklahoma, lives up to his famous name as he makes it goal to go on the 7. On fourth down, Tommy McDonald tears through the Tar Heel, and it looks like he's over, but it's down to the 1-yard line. Bob Burris bores his way into Tar Heel territory as he carries to the 44. Set back by a penalty, the Sooners call on Burris again, and he scrambles through the North Carolina secondary on a beautiful run to the Tar Heel 34. Tommy McDonald takes a pitch out and fires one of the few passes of the game. John Bell wraps it up, and once again it's goal to goal. Jimmy Harris comes back and hands off to Tommy McDonald. Tommy tears around right in and lopes through the Longhorns on a 28-yard touchdown trip that puts Oklahoma out in front of Texas 6-0. Del Womack waffles the center of the Oklahoma line for 5 yards. The Sooners send Cecil Morris crashing through the steers to the Texas 25. Quarterback Jay O'Neill keeps the ball as he goes through the line, then pitches back to Cecil Morris, who gets to the Longhorn 14. The Sooners make it all the way this time. Tommy McDonald sprints for home and makes it standing up as Oklahoma ups its advantage over the University of Texas 13-0 at the end. Tommy McDonald takes a pitch out and then lobs a pass to John Bell as the Oklahomans move to the Longhorn 29. Jim Harris keeps the ball and scrambles through the left side. He pitches back to Billy Pricer, and Billy barrels for 21 yards to make it goal to go for the Sooners. Bob Burris dives over for the score as Oklahoma extends its winning streak to 22 by defeating the Texas Longhorns for the 4th straight time.
1956 Georgia Tech versus Tennessee. I included a sequence in here because I found it and was just kind of interesting, but it shows how football was played at the time. Georgia Tech will punt, and the ball will be down at the 3 or 4 yard line of Tennessee. And Tennessee, instead of trying to run the ball out of there or try to run any plays, they just come out and punt on first down. And this was a lot more common back in the day than it is now. So there's that piece of college football history. I'd appreciate it if you'd let me know what you think of the footage segment of these videos. Anything I could do better, anything I could do to improve or make different to make it more enjoyable for you. Leave a comment. Today, the principles of the split tee and the option play are everywhere. Modern RPO, run pass option offenses used by today's college and NFL quarterbacks still rely on the same quarterback decision making Faurot introduced 80 years ago. So the next time you see a quarterback keep the ball on an option play or make a last-second pitch to his running back, remember you're watching Don Faurot's legacy in action. Football is a game of evolution. Every great innovation starts somewhere. Don Faurot may not be the most famous name in college football history, but his impact unquestionable. This is John Johnston with Hardcore College Football History. If you want to see the whole playlist of the history of offense, here it is. Thank you.